morning, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. So today is September 29th. It was on this date in 1829 that the London's reorganized police force first took to the streets, affectionately known as the Bobbies. Started on this date in 1829. Today, 1907, Gene Autry's birthday. This is one of my dad's favorites, and it was always good when my dad was still alive. When it came time for Father's Day or birthday or Christmas presents, you could get him either something related to the Marine Corps or something related to any famous cowboy star of the 1940s and 1950s, of whom Gene Autry was one of the best. Has anybody actually watched the Gene Autry movie? Movie or show, either one. They were both. I've seen. I remember watching one years ago. There was like a Saturday afternoon. They would do a pair of B westerns, and it was just. I would have been, I don't know, it would probably been around 1990 or 1995. I was watching this, and Gene Autry with the flamboyant outfit, riding along with his guys, and one of the guys in the back says, "How about a song, Gene?" And Gene says, "Okay, and let's sing a song." And I guess that's exactly how it was in the West, as far as I know. But be that as it may, it was on this date in 1978 that John Paul I was found dead in the Vatican. He'd only been the Pope for about 30 days, something like that, a very short period of time. And this, of course, this is kind of, if you know, you know, this is a very significant event for those of us who are fans of the Godfather series, because the death of John Paul I plays a big role in that particular. It was great because I had just gotten my first subscription to U.S. News and World Report. I was this kid. I thought this was great. And the first story is about this dead Pope. Picture of the Pope lying in state, and I got to read all about how the Pope is chosen and all that good stuff with the white smoke and the black smoke kind of thing. I tried to get a church to do that during the pastoral search process. Every time the search committee met, I wanted to invite, but they wouldn't go for that. So I don't know. Yeah, no fun anymore, right? In 1980, where were you on this date in 1982? Does anybody remember this day in 1982? I know because I got a phone call from my mother at college wanting to know because they realized that 7 people in the Chicago area died after unwillingly taking extra strength Tylenol. Remember the Tylenol poisoning? This was the day that they realized it's tied to Tylenol. And I've always been susceptible to headaches my entire life. And so I've been taking aspirin since I was, I don't know, this tall, and it was whatever kind, and my mother was worried that I might have extra strength Tylenol. So she called me at that school in South Carolina. I forget, what was the name of it? Whatever. I said, "What kind of aspirin do you have?" I'm like, "Excedrin." And she said, "Okay, you can take that," kind of thing. And then a couple of baseball things today. It was on this date in 1957 that the New York Giants played their last game at the Polo Grounds, which is where Willie Mays had first started, and then they moved to San Francisco. And it was on this date in 2004 that the Montreal Expos announced that they were moving to Washington, D.C. to become the Washington Nationals. They hadn't had a team in Washington for about 30, 35 years. Prior to that had been the Washington Senators, had been the Washington, D.C. baseball team. And I said all that to say because the Washington Senators were famously described, Washington, does anybody know this one? First in war, first in peace, last in the American League. I said all that, yes. So yeah, that's about it. But today is September 29th, a.k.a. Michaelmas, or the Feast of St. Michael is today. Which is a feast dedicated toward the end of the harvest. And so some of the traditions that are related to Michaelmas is that, for one thing, it's the end of the harvest. So I explained this to Debbie on the way up here, that it's Michaelmas, so it's the end of the harvest, so you're supposed to pull up everything today. This is it. Okay, that went over really well, kind of thing. But you're also supposed to pull up if you don't do that, you're supposed to pull up all your carrots. You're not supposed to pull any carrots after Michaelmas. And if you pull up on Michaelmas a 2-pronged carrot, you pick up that's good luck for the year, kind of thing. Yeah. You're supposed to give everybody a daisy on Michaelmas. This is part of the thing. And here's the fun thing. The other fun little thing about Michaelmas is you're supposed to steal your neighbor's horse. You steal your neighbor's horse and then you give it back the next day. But you have to give it back the next day. So if you have a neighbor who has a horse, you have license, I guess. Go steal the horse and see how that goes. All right, when we last left our heroes, and I realize I haven't passed out the handout yet. When we last left our heroes, Saul had just been made king. He'd been anointed in 1 Samuel 10 by Samuel. And as I was kind of researching and going on, looking at the next couple of chapters, 10 and 11, I realized more and more that in order to really understand what's going on in 10 and 11, we need to understand better a story from the book of Judges. Okay? And it's a story from the book of Judges that I don't personally think I've ever heard preached on. A lot of people preach on Samson, we preach on Gideon, but we don't preach on the Benjaminite War in Judges 19 through 21. Okay, so it's the last story in the book of Judges, and it kind of encapsulates two things about Judges itself. One is it shows what the level of depravity in Israel was at the time, how bad things had gotten. And this story ends, the final line of this story is that in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. But the other thing it does is it solidly puts the blame for this story in particular on the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, what tribe is Saul from? Does anybody remember? Benjamin. All right, so I'm going to try and tell the story of Leviticus 19 through 21. You don't have to turn there. Judges 19 through 21. You don't have to turn there. I'm going to try and tell this story with as little commentary as possible, which for me, it may be as little commentary as possible. But so in Leviticus, Judges. You know what I mean. When I say Judges, I mean Leviticus. I mean, okay, whatever. It involves a Levite, and I'm looking down here in my notes at Levite, and I think Judges, Levite, Leviticus. Okay. So be that as it may, Judges chapter 19 has this story. So there's a Levite from Ephraim. Okay, this is a different tribe, who goes to Bethlehem and takes a concubine. Okay, concubine is like a secondary wife, sort of, although he's later referred to as her husband in the text. But he takes this, he goes and gets this concubine, whatever reason, not a lot of explanation, just Levite goes, gets a concubine. And he's going to come back, and on his way back home to Ephraim, I take that back. He gets this concubine. The concubine turns out to be unfaithful to him. Okay? So he goes and gets her. It's sort of along like Hosea, with Gomer and all that. So the concubine is unfaithful. So he goes and gets her. And as he's coming back, he's coming back, or when he gets there, he's I think it's with his father, I forget what, and he stays 3 nights. Then the father gets up and says, "No, stay another night." It's a weird story, and he goes, "Oh, stay another night, kind of thing. He finally leaves like in the afternoon of the 5th day, and he ends up staying. He's coming back toward his home in Ephraim, and he goes through the town of Gibeah. Okay, and there's no place to stay. It's like there's no room in the inn. He's kind of sitting there with his concubine, and then this old guy comes by and says, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" And they say, "Well, we don't have a place to stay." And he said, "Well, you don't want to sit out here. Come home with me." Okay, so the man and his concubine and goes to this old guy's house. Now, at this point, the text makes it very clear that the residents of Gibeah were all Benjaminites. Okay, just right, they're all Benjaminites. Okay, so he goes home to this guy's house, and they're eating dinner, and all of a sudden the house is surrounded, and the NIV calls it, by wicked men who are surrounding, shouting, "Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him." Okay, has anybody heard this story preached in church? This one gets this. Does this sound familiar? It sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, very much like this, what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, so the wicked men of the town, and the men of the town are from what tribe? Benjamin. The men of the town surround the house, bring out the men. The man offers his virgin daughter and the concubine to the crowd. Okay, says, "Hey, listen, you don't want this guy. Here, take this guy's concubine and take my virgin daughter." Okay, does that sound familiar? Sodom. Remember, what does Lot do? He goes, "Here, take my two daughters." Okay, so they refuse. So the man, again, he's a Levite. He's never identified by name, but the man just pushes his concubine out the door and says, "Here," and closes the door. Okay, and ultimately she is abused and raped to death. There on and the next morning, okay, the man gets up, opens the door, sees the woman laying there. Again, I'm not making this up. This is all in the text, okay? He sees the woman laying there. He basically says, "Hey, come on, get up." He realizes she's not moving. She's dead. So he puts her on a donkey, carries her back home. When he gets the body home, okay, he cuts the body up into 12 pieces and sends it to the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? I don't know whether he sends a piece to the tribe of Benjamin or not. I don't know, but he cuts the body up into 12 pieces, sends it to the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? Now we're into chapter 20. Okay? So the first response is that all Israel gathers at Mizpah. Okay, so again, he was going through Gibeah. Now all of Israel is gathered at Mizpah. And they vow revenge on Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. They're blaming Benjamin for this atrocity. Okay, so they vow revenge on Benjamin and demand Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, turn over the men of Gibeah that did this heinous act. Okay, well, the men of Benjamin refuse. Okay. In fact, Benjamin mobilizes, and they have 26,000 swordsmen, including 700 from Gibeah, okay, and 700 left-handed soldiers. It's just the text says, and there's 700 soldiers who are left-handed. Okay, so if you're left-handed and you want to feel identified, here's your chance, kind of thing. I don't know if I'd really want to say, "Hey, that's me." You might want to stay away from that. And so now Israel says, "All right, I see how it's going to be," right? And so Israel mobilizes. The other 11 tribes mobilize. Okay. Now, side note, in this whole thing, they vow, okay, we're going to show Peace Benjamin a lesson. So much so that we vowed at this point that none of our daughters are ever going to marry a Benjaminite son. Somewhere in here this happens. Okay, we don't know when it happens. We know later that it does. I'm just kind of telling you this is probably when it does. Okay, so they go to the Lord. They go to the Lord and they say to the Lord, now who's doing the talking? I don't know. Okay, who's contacting with the Lord? How this communication is going? It just says Israel inquired of the Lord, and they said, "All right, which tribe is going to lead the fight? Who's going to lead the fight against this evil tribe?" Okay, and the Lord replies, "Judah." What tribe is David from? Judah. Okay, Judah's going to lead the fight against this atrocity, this heinous group, this wicked bunch of guys that caused this terrible thing. Okay, well, it doesn't go well for Judah at first. Okay, the first day they lose 22,000. The second day, they lose 18,000. The third day, they go back to the Lord and say, Lord, is this going to, and the Lord tells them, again, this is in the text, all right, today, it's kind of like, I don't know whether it was, the Lord just wanted to see if they were serious. I don't know, but he says, go ahead, today we'll do it. And on the third day, Judah and the rest of Israel go in attack, and they basically kill 25,000 Benjaminites. Now remember, how many did they have to start with? 26,000. So and the 700 left-handed soldiers and all of that. But basically, they knock out 96.5% of Benjaminites' fighting force, okay, and wreak whatever other damage they do on the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, Israel routs them, kills off almost all the men of the tribe of Benjamin, because the Benjamin wasn't one of the larger tribes to begin with. So Benjamin is killed off here. So far, so good. Now in chapter 21, Israel suddenly realizes, we probably shouldn't have wiped out an entire tribe. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to help these guys? Because they've got a problem. Because they all vowed that they wouldn't let their daughters marry the remaining men of Benjamin. Okay? And so they're like, okay, what are we going to do? So they thought, well, what we're going to do, let's first of all, let's figure out who came, who we were all here, who wasn't here. Now, this is after the battle. They sit around and they say, you know what? Let's make sure everybody was a part of this. So who wasn't here? Who didn't show up? And so they do a poll. I don't know how they do it, but they realize that the city of Jabesh Gilead did not show up. For whatever reason, maybe they, weren't, maybe their internet was down. I don't know. There's something. They didn't get the email, didn't get the memo. For whatever reason, the town of Jabesh Gilead does not respond to this attempt, it's not an attempt, to this wipeout of the tribe of Benjamin. Okay? So they say, all right, before we worry about Benjamin, let's go wipe out the city of Jabesh Gilead. So, because Israel's on a roll here, right? Let's go wipe out there. En route, and this is sort of, this is just the story. Okay, en route to the town of Jabesh Gilead, they say they happen through an area where they see 400 virgins, unmarried women from the tribe of Jabesh Gilead. And they, again, I don't know if they were carrying signs or something or whatever, probably based on how they were dressed. But they're there, there's 400 of them, they're from Jabesh Gilead. So they take these 400 women, they capture them, and they bring these 400 women back, and they give all of these 400 women from Jabesh Gilead to the tribe of Benjamin and say, here's 400 of women for you. Okay, you can marry these 400 women. Okay? Where the parents are, I don't know. Doesn't matter, because the town is going to go in there and they're going to wipe out the town of Jabesh Gilead. It turns out, and then this is just a side note, it's kind of a fun little rationale. It's not enough. They need more than 400 women from the town of Jabesh Gilead than they got from the town of Jabesh Gilead. Benjamin does. And so now they're in a quandary because all of the leaders of Israel had vowed that no one from their tribe would marry somebody from Benjamin. They would not give their daughters to the men of Benjamin. Okay? So they come up with this really bizarre idea. There's a festival going on, I believe it's in Shiloh. There's this festival going on in Shiloh, and this festival involves a lot of single women dancing by themselves, or in groups by themselves, in what we would, an unprotected area. So the men of Israel tell the men of Benjamin, go sit in the woods and watch this festival, and when you see a woman come dancing close to you, okay, I'm not making this up, this is in the Bible, okay, go out, grab her, and kidnap her and take her back to Benjamin, and she'll be your wife. And they say, and this is like one of the greatest workarounds I've ever seen. They will say, but the people say, well, wait a minute. I said I wouldn't give my daughter. And they say, it's okay. You're not giving your daughter. They kidnapped her. So how to get around a vow, thanks to the people of Jabesh Gilead. Okay. Has anybody heard that preached on? It's not, it's an interesting story to do. So now he passes out the handout. Oh wait, I have finished the story. I have finished the story. It Judges ends. That's it. It says they go out. They say, oh, they give this workaround.
I did hear one preacher say it is very difficult to preach from the last chapters of Judges because you don't even know who the good guys are.
Yeah. So, as we look at our text today, I say we have a brief review of Judges 19 through 21. Okay. So right away, as a result of that story, okay, and you can go back and read, and actually the story is just, it's just it's just written as fact. There's no, this happened. But then the very last thing is, in those days there was no king. Every man did that. So if you're looking at that, going, wait, what's going on here? It's like, well, hey, it was like, it was a different time, kind of thing. But we know something now that we didn't know before about the town of Mizpah. Okay, we know something about the town of Gilgal. An event that took place in the town of Gilgal. Okay? We know two things about Jabesh Gilead. Okay, we know two things about Jabesh Gilead. Okay, the first thing we know is that the tribe of Benjamin would probably have a warm spot in their heart for them. Because those were the one group that did not take place in our, and again, I'm drawing these conclusions, okay? And then the second thing we know is Saul may very likely be a descendant of someone from Jabesh Gilead. I don't know. I'm just saying this is a possibility. Okay? So that's all in the background. And my guess is, and my belief is that, the original readers of Samuel would have known this story. So when and in the Old Testament especially, place matters. When the text says, okay, something happened in a place, it's always interesting to kind of look, okay, what else do we know about that place? What else do we know happened there? Because sometimes, and we do this today, when President Obama launched his presidential campaign, he did it on the steps of the old state capitol in, I don't know which one. There's a couple. I think it was the one in Springfield. But, the kind of, where Lincoln had been and kind of has that sort of stuff. And so sometimes stuff happened, they would particularly do things at particular locations, knowing what had happened in that place. Okay? So, Saul may very likely be a descendant of someone from there. All right? Now, let's go back to our story. This will all come back and we'll go, oh, I see here. Okay, so after his anointing, Saul is told that three things are going to happen to him, and they do. Okay, that is, Saul is anointed in the first part of 1 Samuel 10 by Samuel. He's anointed. He says, all right, you're going to leave here, and you're going to meet somebody who's going to tell you about the donkeys. You're going to meet some men with some extra bread, and they're going to give the bread to you. And we talked about here that this is, possibly that was bread meant for a priestly offering, and Saul's taking this, suggests he's accepted his anointing. That's kind of, could be, could not be. And then you're going to meet a group of people prophesying, and we talked about that last week and suggested that that was probably some type of singing, because there were music and all of that, and Saul a singer and all of that kind of stuff, okay? So as Saul turned to leave, okay, where am I? After it's told that three things would happen, and they do, okay? Now I want to point out something here that may or may not be important. I don't know. I'm seriously don't know. if you look at 1 Samuel 10, he says, when he's talking about the third thing, after that you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. Okay. Now, why does the nation of Israel want a king? What is like the primary reason they want a king? Not just to be like other nations. We know that. But what do they want the king to do? They wanted to lead them in battle. Who's the big bad guy? The Philistines. Okay. So Samuel says to Saul, listen, the third thing that's going to happen is you're going to go down here to these to this town where there's a Philistine outpost. Okay. And then he says, where am I here? After that, you'll go to Gibeah of God, where there's a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet the prophets, etc. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed once these signs are fulfilled. Do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you. Okay? Now, is there a suggestion here that Saul, king, Philistines, do something? I don't know. But you think, well, wait, it's just Saul. Just Saul. I mean, Saul's by himself. Okay, so later on in the story, as we get further on, we're going to read a story about how Saul's son, Jonathan, and his armor bearer take out a Philistine outpost, lead the triumph to victory and all of that by themselves, kind of thing. Is he supposed to do something? I don't know. Maybe. Does he? No. He doesn't do anything about the Philistine outpost. Okay? Just kind of, so it's like the third event, I know it says even, but it should be event, takes place near Gibeah, where a Philistine outpost exists. Does this matter? To me, maybe. Some people go, absolutely. I mean, the text doesn't say. The text just points it out. But, you know, to me, it's like Samuel said, okay, you're here to beat the Philistines, and okay, I'm going to send you down there. The power of God is going to be upon you. You know, the same God that split the water of the Red Sea, the same God that split the water of the Jordan River, the same God that brought Jericho into your hands. Do whatever your hand finds to do. And what his hand finds to do is to go home. Okay? Maybe he's, see, I think, I think Samuel is still a little, this is my opinion, my small o opinion. Samuel is still a little incredulous that Saul is the king. I mean, he's upset that they chose the king. He's like, okay, you know, it's one of those, all right, God, this is what you want. I'm like, you know, maybe Samuel is the one giving the test. Maybe this isn't God's test. I don't know. It's just sort of interesting to me, kind of thing. But so, be that as it may. So as Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart. Okay. Saul is told. So what does what does Saul do about the Philistine outpost? Nothing. Saul is told at Gibeah, the Spirit will come upon you. You will prophesy, and you will be changed into a different person. As Saul turned to leave, God changed Saul's heart. Okay? What happened to Saul here? Is he now a believer? Has he accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior? Does he have internal security? Okay? I would say no, probably not. And again, it's a tough. It's not clear as far as what does it mean. Did it give Saul a new direction in life? Did Saul say, I'm a new man, I know what I need to do at this point? Is he converted in the sense that he's going to change direction and he realizes this is what I have to do? I don't know. We don't know. The text isn't clear. Okay. This is part of, if you're developing a theology of the Holy Spirit, you have to differentiate between, in the Old Testament predominantly, when you hear about the Spirit, you hear about the Spirit coming upon someone. Whereas in the New Testament, when the Spirit is on a believer, is indwelling them. Okay, so there's a distinction. And we don't have the time to go into this, but this may be the first time Saul has ever felt this. Maybe he's like, wow, this is This is great. But whatever it is, it isn't enough for him to turn and fight the Philistine outpost. Okay? And it's something that's kind of tricky throughout Saul's life, because you hear about spirits coming upon Saul, evil spirit from the Lord coming upon Saul. We'll talk about that in a couple of chapters. Sort of like, okay, well, this is how the Spirit works in the Old Testament. Okay? And so, it says in verse 10, when he and his servant arrived at Gibeah, a procession of prophets, and the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him. Okay? Kind of a confirmation of what Samuel had told him was going to happen. And so, excuse me. I'll edit the coughing out. Probably. So they asked each other, what is this that has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? Okay. The Spirit of God came powerfully upon him. Saul's prophesying raises questions. And here when they say, and what has happened to this son of Kish? Okay. This is probably pejorative. It's probably an insult. Okay. We don't really know. But if you were a prophet, it was assumed that you came from a prophetic family. Later on, it was, I forget who says it, I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet kind of thing, that that it ran in the family kind of thing. And there's no indication that Kish was any kind of a prophet. And so Saul, being super tall and super good looking, didn't fit in with these prophets. And people are like, wait, who? You know, he's not even from a prophetic family. It's kind of like in the New Testament where when somebody talks to Jesus and, you know, and they say, is not this Mary's son? That's actually kind of an insult, because usually we'd be referred to as the son of your father, and if your father is not around, to not have a father was kind of a, oh yeah, sort of thing. You don't really see the insult element to it. Okay, so this is the first indication we have that not everybody is enamored with Saul being the king. Okay. So, in fact, a man who lived there answered, and who is their father? So it became a saying, is Saul also among the prophets? After Saul stopped prophesying, he went to the high place, which is probably Gibeah. But again, this is where the altar would be, or the religious center of the neighborhood would be. But ultimately, there's a skip in time here because he starts heading back home. Okay? He starts heading back home, and he meets up with his uncle, verse 14. Now Saul's uncle asked him and his servant, where have you been? Okay, now this is not Saul's father, Kish. This is Saul's uncle. Okay, now the uncle here is not named, but it's quite possibly a guy named Ner, N-E-R. Okay, who is Abner's father. Okay, so Abner and Saul are cousins. Abner is going to become Saul's general, leader of his military. Okay, but we don't know. Could have more than one uncle, but one of his uncles is Ner. But regardless, the uncle sees them coming. Hey, where have you guys been? Right? Because it's been 4 days, 5 days. All you had to do is go find 2 donkeys. And again, this kind of suggests that Saul's skill as a shepherd isn't the greatest, which isn't a good metaphor for king. So where are you going? Yeah, where you been? Looking for the donkeys, he said. But when we saw they were not found, we went to Samuel. Notice Saul is taking credit for his servant's idea here. Samuel's uncle said, tell me what Samuel said to you. Okay, Saul's uncle said, tell me what Samuel said to you. Now it's interesting that Samuel's uncle recognizes Samuel. Saul doesn't. Saul didn't like, what? There's a man of God here? Where? Kind of, who is he? I don't know. And it's interesting because if you contrast Saul's family with Samuel's family, Samuel's family in chapter 1, they say every year Samuel's family got up, went, Elkanah and Hannah and all of their family went every year to the temple, to do their yearly worship, whereas Saul's not. Oh, there's a man of God here? Really? Saul's uncle knows who it is. Okay? Saul replied, he assured us the donkeys had been found, but he did not tell his uncle what Samuel had said about the kingship. Okay, so is he lying? Well, he's leaving some things unsaid, right? And I suppose it makes sense at a human level, because here Saul comes back having failed to find the donkeys. You had one job, go find 2 donkeys. You come back after 5 days. The donkeys have been back for at least 2 days now. The donkeys have been back for 2 days. The guys looking for them are still out. They come back. That's not a good time to say, oh, and by the way, I'm the new king of Israel. That may not go over well. But, is it, to me, it's just interesting that he doesn't tell them. Again, it's not quite the moment. So Saul is back home. Okay. Saul is back home. Samuel, uncle, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Samuel calls Israel to gather at Mizpah. Ooh, Mizpah. Have we heard of that town before? Okay. Well, we've already gathered there once before. This is where Samuel gathered everybody and did this in chapter 8, and then they beat the Philistines back, and where Samuel's first big event takes place at Mizpah. It's also the place where Israel got together and vowed to destroy Benjamin. Okay, so this is not necessarily a fun place for somebody from Benjamin to go. Okay, it may not be warm memories kind of thing. All right, I mean, again, we bring back some, again, I mean, if you're a Jewish, and I mean no disrespect here at all, but if you're a Jewish congregation having a service or having a meeting, having a conference at the site of a former concentration camp, would that go over well? Okay, it's kind of like, ooh, this might not be, but still, that's the town that it took. I mean, there's decades and a couple of centuries probably in between it, but still, is that where you really want to go? But still, Samuel calls everybody to Mizpah. Okay? Let's see, where am I here? Samuel summoned the people of the Lord at Mizpah and said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought Israel up out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the power of Egypt and all the kingdoms that oppress you, but you have now rejected your God. So Samuel is not going to let this go. Okay? So my kudos to Samuel, right? Samuel's not going to let this go. Okay? Samuel reminds Israel of the Exodus and then points out, but you, Israel, have now rejected your God. Okay. And we talked about that last week on what a colossally bad idea having a king was. How it upset the dynamic, how it changed the relationship between God and the people of Israel. Okay? And Samuel's not letting it go. Okay, and he's not done. Okay, he's not done. But Samuel, but now you have rejected your God who saves you out of all your disasters and calamities, and you have said, no, appoint a king over us. So now present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clans. Okay, so Samuel says, all right, I just want to, you wanted a king. We talked about it. The Lord said, okay. Then Samuel sent everybody home. Now he's got everybody back. He says, now I'm going to just show you we're going to see who God has chosen. And I think there are at least two things going on here. First of all, it could be that Samuel is still thinking, okay, seriously, God, is this really who you want to be the king? Is this really the guy? And he wants Israel to see that God is, because they're doing it through a system of lots, or somehow, again, we don't know the details of the logistics of this, but it's something that the people are seeing. Okay, so it isn't like that Samuel just went out and said, you know what, that guy's tall and good looking, let's make him the king. Okay? Yes?
I mean, from all angles, Saul's a bad king from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But God chose him.
Yes.
So was this as punishment to Israel? I'll give you a king, but you ain't gonna like him.
I don't know if punishment is quite the right word. It is a situation where where God is giving the people exactly what they want, and giving them the kind of king that they want, who's going to do ostensibly what they think they want, kind of thing. That's a good question, and that's kind of the big question all the way through. Because and I don't want to try to definitively answer it now, because similar questions come up with David. Okay, so David has some issues. Okay, I mean, we know we like David, cute shepherd boy, writes songs. Okay, great, but David has some issues as king.
David had a relationship with God,
You know,
and he did come back to him.
yes.
You know, in other words, like all of us, we all have flaws.
Mm-hmm.
We all sin, and we confess, and we get forgiven. You know.
Yeah, and we just read about how the Spirit of God powerfully came upon Saul. So it's like, you know, Saul had some sort of a relationship with God. I don't, you know, again, it's Old Testament,
Right.
so it's the prior, dare I say, dispensation. Don't hate me, okay? But it's or prior covenant, you know, kind of thing.
But is there evidence that Saul worshipped God? I mean, no.
It depends on what you mean by evidence. I mean, Saul gives a sacrifice, and Saul inquires of the Lord, and the Lord answers. So, it's, you know, is that the Lord being kind, or is that based on an actual relationship? Again, it's Old Testament, and so I don't know. You know, these are, you know, we can't really definitively say one way or the other. Okay. So it's clear that, you know, Saul is maybe chosen to make a point that, okay, you want a king, I'm going to give you a king. Okay, and there's signs all through the story. Now keep in mind, this is written after the fact. Okay, so it could be that the writer of Samuel, whoever that person was, is like, there were all these signs that we should have seen, and we didn't. Okay, so and it's going to be stacked against against Saul, because by the time the book is written, it's the Davidic kingdom, it's the Judean line that is firmly ensconced. Okay, so we don't want Saul to look good at all. Okay, kind of thing. So, and in fact, if you think about this, they're going to bring him out, and they're going to kind of go through by tribes, and then within the tribes by clans, and then within the clans by families. Does anybody remember the last time in the Old Testament this was done? Achan. In Joshua chapter 7, when they needed to find out who sinned at Ai. Okay, let's do this. It's just a coincidence. I'm just saying it's, you know, it's as good a way as any. And so Samuel says, all right, he's got the whole people there. He's got everybody there. And he says, all right, we're going to go through this one, you know, Judah, nope. Issachar, nope. Simeon, nope. Dan, or, you know, Ephraim, goes through all 12 tribes, and Benjamin. Okay, so you can imagine in the mind of the Israelites to be standing at Mizpah and be told that your new king is coming from Benjamin. Wow, that's interesting. And then then you go to the end, it gets to Saul's family, they take it down to Kish's family, and then they figure out, somehow or other, they figure out that it's Saul. So, you know, maybe Saul has only, maybe Kish has only one son, maybe at this point, or maybe, you know, everyone else, it's not him, it's not him, it's not him. Oh, it's Saul. Ta-da! Where's Saul? He's not there. Okay. Says, where was I here? So now when Samuel had all Israel come forward by tribes, the tribe of Benjamin was taken by lot. Then he brought forward the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan, and Matri's clan was taken. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was taken. But when they looked for him, he was not to be found. Okay, so I'm like, I don't know who they are. This is one thing I was kind of It's been harping on my English 12 students, like, pronoun antecedent. Like, who are they? Is it Samuel? Is it the elders? Is it the people? Whoever. Now they're looking for Saul. And Saul's not an easy guy to hide, right? I mean, he's a head taller than everyone, and he's very good looking. I mean, imagine Paul trying to hide. It's kind of the same thing. Okay, but so they find Saul, and the Lord said, yes. So they inquired further of the Lord, has the man come here yet? Okay, so my note in the Bible is like, seriously, Saul, what is the matter here? Okay, and the Lord has to say, yes, he's there. He's hiding in the packaging, or he's hiding. What is it? He's hidden among the supplies. So the people of it, and so again, this double reinforces that God has chosen, that this is not Samuel's idea. He's not Samuel's choice. He's God's choice. Okay, because Sam's like, I don't know where he is, and the Lord says, they ask the Lord, where is he? And the Lord says, oh, he's back in the supplies somehow. They ran and brought him out, and as he stood among the people, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people. Which is a really good, I think this is like I don't know if this is, what would you call this? Damning with faint praise, or a left-handed compliment, or one of those kind of things that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. Okay? Like there is, when I was a kid, we would do something, no doubt it's one of my siblings, because I was the passive-aggressive one in the background causing trouble. My dad would come up and he would say, there is no end to your talent. I would do something dumb sometimes, occasionally, maybe once. There is no end to your talent. Okay, and that is a statement that you think, oh, well, that's a compliment, right? Yeah, no, that never was. Yeah, that never was. And so Samuel is standing there. Look, there he is. There is no one like him. Here's your king, kind of thing. Here's your guy, right here. Here's your guy. There is no one like him in all of the kingdom. Then the people shouted, long live the king. Hurrah, huzzah, long live the king. But when they looked for Saul, he was not to be found. Saul is found. Samuel says, there is no one like him among all the people. The people shout, long live the king. In verse 25, Samuel then explained to the people the rights and duties of the kingship. He said, all right, you got your guy. Let me explain to you how this is going to work. Okay, Samuel is the prophet. Okay, Samuel is the priest. Samuel is the voice of the Lord. Everything Samuel says turns true. Okay, that's what the servant said about him. Okay, so he explains all of this. He wrote them down on a scroll and deposited it before the Lord. Now, I would love to see this scroll. What is actually written on this scroll? I mean, is it a list of things so that someday Samuel can come back and say, aha, told you so? Is it the passage where he says he's going to take and take and take and take and take? Perhaps. We don't know. We don't know what's on this scroll. Okay, maybe it's just saying this is the king's responsibility. This is the prophet's responsibility. Okay, but whatever, it's written down and deposited before the Lord. Okay, is that left in the tabernacle, put in the ark? We don't know. Okay, but what's interesting is that this was always supposed to be a limited monarchy. Okay, what we would call today a limited monarchy. The king was never supposed to have absolute rule. Okay, that the prophet, and to a certain extent, this plays out throughout the history of Israel. That the king, would kind of start crossing the line. The prophet would come in and set him straight. Sometimes the prophet would like, okay, do what you. Ultimately, of course, the kingdom is destroyed. I mean, this is, hundreds of years later, but still. So in 1025, Saul explains the new dynamic. He writes it down and deposits it before the Lord. The kingdom was always supposed to be a limited monarchy. Okay? So like in 822, he wrote them down, then Samuel dismissed the people to go to their own homes. Just like in 822. Samuel has said, here's your king, here are the rules, here's how it's going to play out. Then let's go home. You've got your king, go home. Verse 26, Saul also went to his home in Gibeah. Ooh, what have we heard about Gibeah? Okay, we heard of that town before. So Saul lives in the town where the thing took place in Judges 19 through 21. Okay, actually, we believe it's the same one. There are actually a couple of different Gibeahs, but it's generally believed that it's the same one. Accompanied by valiant men whose hearts God had touched. Okay, so he's got a bodyguard, he's got a small army, he's got a fighting force, he's got people with him that can do fighting. But some scoundrels, and I believe that's the word used to describe Hophni and Phinehas, okay? But some scoundrels said, how can this fellow save us? Now, can you imagine what it would have been like, how this would have gone, had Saul taken the opportunity to take out that Philistine outpost? Okay, right now, all they see is a tall, good-looking guy. Now, if you've ever been at work in a job, and there's an opening in this particular job, and it's applied for, somebody, or they announce that somebody has been brought in to do the job, maybe a new CEO, and you look up and you see, it's a tall, good-looking guy. And if that's all you can describe him as, that doesn't necessarily put a lot of confidence in the rank and file. Well, he certainly is good looking, but did he know anything about the widgets we make? Okay. Yeah, he's tall and good looking. I hear he's not a very good shepherd. Okay. What else can he do? Okay. They despised him and brought him no gifts. But Saul kept silent. Okay, at this point. Saul hasn't warmed up to this idea of being king, perhaps, or he knows he doesn't necessarily have it's not the right moment. Not everyone is happy about Saul's being named king. Regardless, Saul remains silent. Okay. Next week we're going to tell the story. We're going to be in 1 Samuel 11, and we're going to find out about Saul goes to rescue the city of, guess what? Jabesh Gilead. Why does Saul suddenly decide it's important to rescue Jabesh Gilead? How does Saul send a message to everyone? Okay, as we go through it next week, maybe we'll talk real quickly about the whole Judges 19 through 21 story again. Because again, it's in parallels. Now, I'm the one making the connection between these two stories. Okay, the text in Samuel doesn't refer back to that, nor does the text in Judges look forward to that. Okay, so I'm the one making the connection here. So, you could argue, well, they're not connected at all. Okay. But I'm just saying, hey, these are very reasonable assumptions as far as what the dynamic was, because they're historical stories, right? So it's a historical story, and the thing about a history book, any book of history, is you already know how it's going to end, right? I mean, you know what happens in the end. Okay, so if you read a biography of Abraham Lincoln, you pretty much know how it's going to end, right? It's like if you read a biography of Abraham, unless it's I forget who unless it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, you know how it's going to end. It's like he takes historical events and just changes them to his, people who die don't die. Okay, but these were things that certainly were on the mind of the people. All right, any questions?
What's the time difference between the end of Judges and the Saul story?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I
A
wonder if,
couple hundred years, I believe. Couple hundred years. Yeah, not a long time, but not, it wasn't like immediate.
I'm trying to help you out here. I mean, if you're saying you are assuming that there's a link and that, you're tying these things together, well, maybe if the timing would work out, well, yeah, there is a link. I'm trying to
Yeah.
justify.
Yeah, no,
Evidence.
I don't know what the actual time is, because again, it's all kind of, see, David is around 1000 AD, BC, I'm sorry. He's around 1000 BC, and the Exodus is 1440 BC. So Joshua would be, a generation past that would be about 1340. And then you go through Judges, several generations here. Yeah, it's probably 100 years, maybe 200 years. I would be surprised if it was more than 200 years.
Close enough that they still would remember easily.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, and if they didn't, I mean, again, I'm intrigued with the idea of, like, who wrote Judges. Who wrote Judges, and it could be, and this is another possibility, that I said that Samuel is written. The book of Samuel is written after the kingdom of David has firmly taken over, and it certainly wants to make the kingdom of Saul, the Saulite kingdom, look, if not illegitimate, at least bad. And so it's going to be slanted against Saul to begin with. And I suspect, my opinion, this is completely my opinion. My favorite idea is that Samuel wrote Judges. That he wrote it like after David is anointed, that he writes Judges. That's my favorite opinion. I have nothing to base it on, but it is my favorite opinion. More likely is someone like Jeremiah or somebody during the captivity wrote it.
And you can have differences between who wrote it and then who compiled it later.
Yeah.
As in Judges, you have Rahab, and she still lives in Israel to this day. So that from that text, that's written pretty early. But then it also says, in those days there was no king in Israel. So
right.
That must have been written
when there was a king in Israel.
So a compiler takes something that was from a couple hundred years earlier.
Yeah. So it could have been like Samuel is like, okay, maybe you guys don't realize this. This is conceivable, because I think Judges was written after Samuel. But again, this is all because they weren't very good about stamping and registering the publication date in the local publication office. So it's kind of speculation. Yes.
You also have the genealogies. To me, that's probably you've got Boaz, his whole story with Ruth, and then you've got the genealogies, so you can kind of guess that way.
Which would lock in Rahab, but I don't think, would anyone else in Judges be? No, Rahab's not. Rahab's in Joshua. Pardon me? Well, yeah.
Anyway, I'm just trying to get fairly closely. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, is anybody noted in Judges in Christ's genealogy? I don't think so, but I don't know that for a fact.
But the story of Ruth takes place in the time of the Judges.
Yes.
It says so.
Yes. It's like, is it the beginning, at the end? Is it during Samson? Is it during the Benjamite War? Is it during, I don't think it's during the Benjaminite War, but that's my opinion. All right, well, next week we'll get back onto talking about the rescue of Jabesh Gilead and continuing the parallels between that and the Benjaminite War story. All right, see you next week.